best deals were always when I could meet with a seller directly. That's the best way to do it, is get to know people, make relationships. We all do know people, and the only thing holding us back from going and creating those opportunities for them is fear. It's only fear that's blocking people. It's not because we have to know all these wealthy people. Align yourself with investment opportunities where there's amazing operators in place already. The system and the situation is proven, the asset class is solid and reliable, and you don't have to manage it and have a job. You can actually just put the money in and have it pay back cash flow and have it be secure.
Man, there's so many different ways you can do it. There's deals out there for everybody. I really believe in that. And there's different ways of finding those deals. There's deals for you that may not be for me. There's deals for me that may not be for you. But bottom line is, if I want it bad enough and I hunt hard enough, those deals are out there. What I do like is seeing value being created. And that's where I found my niche in real estate, is taking something and seeing a vision for how that could look to getting it to a value that's significantly higher than what it is today.
Welcome to episode 7 of Hacking Real Estate. Well, we're coming into that home stretch. This is a 9-part documentary series. We're in episode 7 now. And the information and the conversations that you've experienced so far, I'm sure you have found very fruitful. A part of this is not only what we can learn for ourselves, but what can we teach to other people that we care about, especially our kids. I know that I've got children right now who are looking at what kind of a career can they create, what kind of a future can they create for themselves. And for all 3 of my kids, I'm having them understand the importance of real estate investment. By learning from this series, it's helping me to also teach them about different aspects of real estate and what possibilities there are for their future. We live in very uncertain times. There's no doubt about that. Economically, it's especially uncertain. And mastering and understanding real estate is a big deal. It can make the difference between struggling for the rest of your life or having financial freedom. And obviously, we're here with you right now because financial freedom is a high value of ours that we want you also to participate in. And maybe you're someone who already has financial freedom, but then you got to protect it. Real estate offers all these different facets, so that's why this entire documentary series is very valuable. It can help you get started. It can help you protect what you've got. It can lead you in all kinds of directions. You can share it with your children, other people that you care about. There's so many possibilities here, and that's what excites me. You can own this entire documentary series, as you well know. Several of you have already made the investment, so thank you for that. Sincerely, it gives us great gratification when we know that you cared enough about this and you felt there's enough value here that you wanted to make an investment and revisit this information and also get the bonuses. If you haven't done that yet, now's a good time, because during the free viewing period, which we're coming to the end of pretty soon, you get some really significant discounts and great bonuses. So just take a look at that. I just want to throw a little reminder out there for you. But in the meantime, I also wanted to get you thinking about not just how this might affect you personally, but where else could you take this information and have it translate into something that matters for someone else. So thank you for being here. Let's jump into episode 7. Well, James, next up you interview somebody who I've known for some years. Love this guy. Great, beaming personality, genuine individual, Aaron Kennard. And I know that around masterminds of entrepreneurs, he's kind of unassuming, but then people would find out that he was quote unquote financially free, meaning he lived off of his investments without really having to work. And he's taught other people how to do that, and he's now moving his life in all kinds of new directions. What was your experience with him?
Yeah, I love talking because he's who I want to be when I grow up, right? I mean, what he's created and how he's done it is, I think, unique. Mm-hmm. Like when you think real estate, mobile homes, maybe not at the top of your list, but how he's done it and how he's created cash flow and wealth. brilliant guy and just, like you said, genuine.
Yeah.
It comes through. He wants to help everybody.
So let him help you right now. Aaron Kennard.
Well, Aaron, thanks so much for being here. Really excited to talk to you about real estate and how to make money. But if you would, let's start with, why don't you tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do and how you got here.
Sounds good. Thanks for having me, James. Yeah, I am Aaron Kennard. I am a real estate investor. I'm a breakthrough coach. I've done many things. I'm an author. I've done a lot of different things in my life and career. And currently I'm focused on in the coaching and transformational coaching space, but also have a lot of real estate that we own, and we continue to invest in real estate in various capacities. And so that's the basics of me and what I'm up to right now.
All right, well, we want to learn about how to make money in real estate, and I think you'll have a lot to offer. When did you get into real estate?
I got in real estate when I was about 25. It's 15, 16 years ago. I just read a couple of books, actually, that got me into it. Kind of read some real estate investing books and quit my sales job, and then just started raising money and buying houses to rent and flip. And yeah, that's about 16 years ago.
Why real estate?
I always just saw that. I mean, as I was learning about it through programs, through the books, through seminar, or different audio things I'd heard about, it always struck me as the way to financial freedom. I had been in sales and been turned on to a couple different books by a couple different people, and then eventually one of the books made me realize that I could do it without having a lot of money. So I ended up quitting my sales job and going into sales in real estate, in a sense, for myself. So that's how I started. I basically I used to have the belief that I had to go and earn a bunch of money and then invest that into properties and then have that property grow, earn more, and put that money down. And I read this book, Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. This was a long time ago. And it just opened my mind, opened my eyes to see that I don't have to use my own money, and that I don't have to rely on banks, and that I could go and just partner with people, borrow money with anybody, go get money from anywhere, anybody, and be able to do deals now. So it kind of opened my field of awareness, and it made me realize that I could do that. I'm very good at sales. I've been doing sales for years, and I'm very confident at being able to present something that makes sense to people and get them on board with it. So I just started doing it. And then over the next year after that, I ended up buying 20 or 30 houses or something, raising a lot of money, just going out to people that I knew, friends and family, and real estate clubs and whatever else. I just started diving in head first. And I also went and got educated a lot. I would go to different seminars. I would hire coaches. I just was soaking up all the knowledge that I could in those first years, and got just kind of dove in head first.
So what did that look like when you first got into real estate, right? You read some books, you got interested and figured out, you don't need a huge nest egg to do this. You can just get going. So what did your first deals look like? How'd you start? Yeah,
I called my dad. I just was like, hey, he's the first, well, there was a couple of people I called. I called my dad. I was like, he's the first person I could think of that would just have cash sitting around that wasn't earning him 10 or 12% interest. And so I just called him. I was like, hey, do you have any money? I happened to know that he had just sold his house and had a bunch of money. So I was like, hey, do you have any money sitting around that's not earning 12% interest right now? And he said, yes. I said, well, how would you like to earn 12% interest securely? By loaning it to me on a real estate deal, and you'll be secured like the bank on the deal, so that if the deal goes bad, you'll be protected, and I'll pay you 12% interest, and I'll fix up the house, and then we'll sell it, and you'll get paid all your money back. He was like, sure. So I was just in the game, and then I had his commitment, and I went out and found a deal to do that. I just went out and started shopping, and I found a house to go and flip. And so the first one we got was, it was just some cheap house in Denver that we had. We got a house for maybe like $70,000. I don't remember at the time, $70,000 that might have needed like $30,000 or $40,000 in renovation. And we just bought it. I borrowed from him the entire amount of the purchase price plus the amount that I needed to renovate it. So I didn't have any money out of my pocket to go and do the deal. And we went and fixed it up and sold it. And we also did that. And then I did it again with him. I borrowed from him to buy houses where we were going to hold them as well. So we would then rent it and find a rent-to-own buyer. And so Yeah, those were the first couple deals. We started buying these rent to own. We started buying houses to hold and rent, and we started buying houses to flip. And he was my first investor, and after that, I just started asking everybody for money. I just started, because I didn't just rely on him. I just realized that I was only limited by how much money I could get from people. So I went out and got a dozen people, different people over the next while to just loan us money on different projects, and ended up getting heavily into it.
So right out of the gate, you did flips and
Rentals, yeah.
Rentals. Earlier, you mentioned that you had gone to your father and said, you could secure him a 12% return.
Yeah.
No matter what happens. How were you going to guarantee that?
It would be secured by I was giving him a loan. So I was doing a promissory note, meaning I was promising to pay that, right? It wasn't like an equity split where we're going to split the profits. It was me saying, I'm committing to pay you 12% interest. And that's a risky thing on me, because then I'm on the hook for that, and that's a pretty high interest rate. And I did that early on, and I was doing that on rentals, but the houses were so cheap that it could break even, but it was a pretty high interest rate to pay for like rentals. On a flip deal, it's easier to pay a higher interest rate because you're turning the money over quicker. So, but the way that it's not like I could guarantee him. I mean, I was personally guaranteeing him, but like, it's not like nothing could go wrong in the deal, I guess, if that's what you're asking.
Yeah.
Like over the course of the years, I lost a lot of money on deals. My lenders never actually lost money, because in that case, like in my dad's case, like over the coming years, there were times when the house project would go bad. I'd get like the contractor would go bankrupt on me, and I would lose all the renovation money, or the market would crash. I mean, because over the years we flipped hundreds of houses, and so I ended up losing money on a bunch of houses, but my lenders never did, because I would just pay them as agreed. It's like, if I was going to lose money on a deal, it would come out of my profits on another deal or something. And so, because they were not equity partners, because they were debt. It was a loan that I had personally guaranteed. Then I just came through on all those loans. I just paid them, even if I had to come with money at closing when I went to sell the property, which wasn't the majority of the time, thankfully, but that happened. And because I always paid everybody back as agreed, they would always loan me again on the next deal. And they realized, and even if I didn't pay them, the worst case scenario for them, if I didn't pay them, like my dad, would be that he could foreclose. He could take the house because he had a security on the house. He could foreclose, and he could recover. He could sell the house himself and get whatever money he could get out of it. So he would never be at risk of losing more than like 30% of his initial payment, depending on how much equity was in the house. I mean, there's a lot of variables at play, but there's always security when you've got a first position deed of trust on the house. And so it's a secure loan, and that depends upon how big of a loan you get. Like he was giving me risky loans because he was giving me like 100% of the purchase price plus the repair money. So if I would have defaulted on him early on, he would have had an asset that was worth less than his amount of his loan, right? But because I went and did the repairs, I made the asset worth more, and that protected him. It's a secure way to do it, but it depends upon the deal. It depends on a lot of variables.
Well, and you did what you could to never sour the relationship. So
I never did. Yeah, no, none of my investors ever lost any money on anything, and so to this day, I still have relationships with all of them, and many of them continue to lend money or do deals with us, even though like we had deals that went bad. They never actually went bad for my investors. My investors always did fantastic. Because we were in debt deals. Mm-hmm. I didn't do a lot of equity type deals where we were like splitting the profits. If we were doing that and then we lost money, then we'd both have agreed that we were not, they would have gotten a higher upside and they would have been taking the risk on the downside. But I did a lot of debt because I was trying to take more of the upside. That's what I was comfortable with, and it didn't always work out.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
With all the ways to go out and find money, which you've become an expert at, what made you think to do that?
Oh, it was because I was self-employed at the time, and I didn't have a lot of good bank. I didn't have a ton of income. I mean, I had a decent income, but I wrote off so much of it that I wasn't very bankable. Like I couldn't go to banks and get tons of loans, so I was very limited on that regard. And it was reading that book that I mentioned that it made me realize that I was not limited by anything other than my creative way of thinking and my ability to go persuade people. So it was wanting to make more money, wanting to do more deals, and having that awareness come up that there's no limitation to getting money. It's just a matter of how creative and persuasive can you be.
And it was profitable for them.
And in making it profitable for them, yeah, it's just a great win-win. It's creating a win-win. It's an amazing deal for my investors because they're getting a secure, high interest rate, way better than they could get elsewhere. Like my dad was getting 4% or 5% elsewhere, and I'm paying him 12%, and it's secured by the real estate. And so he's really happy. He's been thrilled ever since. I've made a bunch of money for him and helped him off into retirement and everything supported him in giving him that opportunity that he didn't even have in other ways. So yeah, it's a beautiful business. You can go and do a lot of good for a lot of people by creating an investment opportunity for somebody by going and finding it, and putting together a deal and doing the work to make it profitable,
You said your first one was in Denver.
My first bunch of them were in Denver, yeah.
Were you living in Colorado?
Yeah, we lived in Denver at the time. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so in the 2006-07 area through on.
Yeah.
Back when you get houses in Denver for like $30,000, $50,000, it was pretty good.
Back in the Stone Age.
Yeah.
So,
It was back in the height of the foreclosure era. Things were really crazy.
So you got into real estate and flipping. Now you're talking about you got to get contractors. So finding the money, you figured out how to do that.
Yeah.
Then how'd you go about finding your properties?
So I'd go to real estate clubs and I'd meet with like I'd start to get to know people in the local area, and there are people that are called wholesalers, people that are out there constantly finding deals. We got a lot of deals through wholesalers by going to the networking clubs or searching on Craigslist or different online to find people that were selling fixer-uppers. That was one way. That was one way I did it. I also got heavily into marketing. Through taking some real estate courses, I learned about how to market directly to sellers of houses themselves. And so I would send letters and mail campaigns to actually people that owned houses in certain areas that I wanted to buy in. And then they would call me and I would meet with them directly, and I would buy houses from people just directly like that. I would put up signs, those whole like we buy houses for cash signs. There was all these different methods of finding houses. There's a lot of methods, but the easiest way and I would even work with realtors. I would go to realtors who would help me find houses on the MLS and find certain investment properties. So I would explore all the options of how to find deals, and the best deals were always when I could meet with a seller directly and cut out the middleman of the realtor, and I could create win-win scenarios with those sellers directly. And oftentimes they would want to finance the house for me because I would give them a loan back on the house, and they would, instead of getting paid all their cash, I would pay them more than I might pay them otherwise if they would leave the money if they would give me the loan as well. So there was lots of ways to make it a big win-win for everybody. There's dozens and dozens of creative ways to buy real estate. Like for example, in one of those cases where a seller came to me, he had two houses, and I bought one of them for cash because he needed some cash, and I paid him like $60,000 for one of his condos. And he liked that deal. And then he had another house, and I said, well, I can pay you $45,000 for that house. That's the current market rate that I'm willing to pay cash. But if you want to leave the loan in place, I'll actually pay you $90,000 for the house. So I paid him double the price for the house, and the way that I was able to do that was because we made the loan at 0% interest. So that what that meant for him is he didn't have to pay tax on it right now because he's getting principal payments. This gets deep into the weeds on some creative stuff, but somebody might be inspired by this.
Sure.
It's like we basically gave him more money, and so more money, but 10 years from now. I did a 10-year loan that was only $400 a month. And then my rent, I immediately bought the house. I paid him $1 for the house. He gave me a loan for $90,000. We immediately rented it for $900 a month. So we're paying $400, we're renting it for $900. And we had taxes and insurance, so our net was a few $100s a month, right? But I didn't have to put any repairs into it or anything. We basically just he transferred the house to me, and we're making $300 a month, and I'm now managing it, taking care of it. But every month, that loan is paying down $400 a month, because it's 0% interest. And he doesn't have to pay tax on that because it's principal. He didn't have to pay tax on the interest that I'm paying him because it's a 0% interest thing. So he's paying long-term capital gains because, again, I paid him $90,000 for the house, and so it's like he's paying long-term capital gains, but he's only paying on the portion that he's receiving. But short story is it's really good for him tax-wise. He makes he doubles his money over 10 years. It's not like he could have taken that $45,000 and gone and invested it somewhere and tried to double it in 10 years, but then he would have had to pay for tax, and he would have had to figure out how to do that. Instead, he just left it right here. He gets his cash flow stream. I get an immediate cash flow on a property. Now, fast forward like 12 years later, I just sold the house for like $230,000. Fun stuff like that you can do. The way that you do deals like that, though, is you've got to go directly to the seller. You can't go through like a realtor because they're just not going to do, they're not that motivated. They're not motivated to sell it on those terms. You don't have that creative options. But yeah, you can go out and sell. Yeah, I did a lot of different things over the years.
What else? Give the number 2. This is really interesting. That I'm trying to stay up to speed with that one deal. So even you offered him double.
Yeah.
But at the end of the day, you made money on the deal.
I made a lot of money. He made great money. He had a great tax benefit. I mean, he made his $90,000 on the deal over the course of 8 or 9 years before I paid him off, and we made a ton because the market just appreciated a ton. Plus, we were paying down that loan, right? So that kind of deal was the best kind of deal that I ever did. But I didn't do a ton of those kind of deals because they're harder to get. It's like you really got to you got to spend a lot of money up front in marketing. I was spending thousands of dollars a month in like sending out letters. So there's an upfront cost. There's a lot of time involved in doing because I had to meet with 10 or so people before I found a deal like that, before I found somebody willing to do those kind of deals. So a lot of sales, a lot of time, a lot of money investment in getting that type of deal up front. It's not easy. To recommend somebody doing that, you've really got to almost have some coaching, or you got to know sales, you got to know marketing in order to be able to make that happen, or you got to have coaching on that. So the way for the general public to get into, the way for somebody who doesn't want to put in a ton of time, ton of energy, and make this their full-time career, to get into real estate and doing deals, the best way to do it is to get a good realtor or to find a wholesaler. Get in the network, go into the clubs, find wholesalers, because the vast majority, even me who had those skills, I eventually stopped doing the marketing because I didn't want to spend the time and energy. And I was going to buy more and more houses. So I'd go to wholesalers. I had a group of wholesalers, 5 or 10 people that were wholesaling, and they would come to me often with their deals because they knew that I would buy them and they knew I had cash ready a lot of the time. But at first I had to go seek them out. I would go to the real estate clubs and I would find them and they would tell me what they have available. And then I would go and see it, and then I'd either make them an offer or not. And usually they're not taking offers. They're just like, this is the price, take it or leave it, because they're only marking it up $5,000 over what they got it for or something, and they're going to sell it to the first person with cash. That's the best, easiest way to get into getting deals is going through wholesalers, because they're already doing all the work of marketing and sifting and finding the deal. So anyway, there's a lot to say about your question about where do you find the deals. The easiest way I found was through wholesalers, but there's a lot of other creative ways to do it.
So you mentioned real estate clubs a couple times.
Yeah.
I'd never heard of
So
a
you
real
just
estate
look
club.
online, local real estate club, real estate investment club. They're in every city. There's people that gather. There's somebody that hosts it, and they gather people that are into real estate investing. They get together. They talk about the deals they do, and they have people come and educate. And then they have networking, and you're just meeting other people that are doing it, and you're meeting the people that are wholesaling, and you're meeting the people that are doing hard money lending. You're meeting all the people in that space that are in the local area that are supporting each other or providing services to each other to support. You meet contractors there. People go to those clubs to kind of meet the other people that are in the space, and then that's a great way to get. That's how I met most of the people that I knew and that I did deals with, was going to those clubs, those local clubs.
I like that because in a lot of the conversations I'm having, one of the things that continually comes up is, on your side of the fence, you know everybody because you're in the game, right?
Yeah.
And
Well,
for
I
those
used
of
to.
us,
I'm actively not now, but yeah, in Denver I did.
Mm-hmm.
Now I moved to Salt Lake, but yes, if I was going to start again here, it would be I'd go get to know people. I would go, and that's the best way to do it, is get to know people, make relationships, get to know the people that have the deals, get to know the people that have the money, and then in my own sphere, call the people that I know that I already have relationships with. That's the best place to get money as far as being able to do the deal, is your own network, because they like you and trust you already. And then you can just present to them hey, I've got this deal. Do you have money that you want to get a better return on?
so the wholesalers, they're finding the properties, purchasing them. Are they rehabbing them?
No, wholesaling is they're just getting it locked up. Oftentimes they haven't even purchased it. They've just got a contract to buy it, and they're effectively going to flip you the contract. They're going to turn it over to you for a $5,000 or $10,000 or $20,000 fee. And so that's what wholesaling is. Wholesaling is Sometimes they own them. Sometimes they've actually purchased them and then they're selling them really quickly. Sometimes that happens.
They're just getting the contract.
Usually they're just locking up the deal. They're getting it tied up in their name with the ability to assign it to somebody else. Then they coordinate getting a buyer in place that brings the money. So the wholesaler, they don't ever put any money out. They're just their time and money is spent in marketing and sales.
Did you ever get into wholesaling?
Yeah, I did wholesaling too. So I wholesaled a number of deals, but it wasn't ever my specialty. And the reason being is because I ended up having a lot of money. Like because I was raising money, I had like $5 million of capital. Because I had so much capital available, I was like, no, I'm going to keep this house and I'm going to fix it up and sell it. I can make 30 or 40,000 by fixing it and flipping it versus 5,000 by just wholesaling it, So I would use the capital that I had. And that's just not as easy. I mean, I found out a lot of hard lessons that way too, because it's hard to fix and flip a house. I mean, it takes a lot of management and effort to get that thing fixed up, especially if you have crews that are unreliable, and especially if you're trying to do 30 of them at a time. I mean, I made a lot of mistakes. Let's just say that.
Well, and I know a few people that do flips, and I know a lot of people have made a lot of money flipping homes.
Yeah.
And it seems pretty simple, right? There's a lot of us out there that, can fix the sheetrock in the house when the kid goes through it with a bike or whatever, and so we think we can fix something up. What are the traps people run into when they try to buy and flip a house?
There's so many. There's so many. But the thing that went against me was I tried to do too many. Like, I literally had over 20, sometimes up to 30 houses going at one time. And it was just me and a project manager trying to manage all these crews, and it was just a lot. So I tried to bite off more than I could really effectively manage. That's one thing, is just start small, make sure you can manage one project well and have it go profitably before you try to do tons of stuff. But then when you're doing that one project, if you do keep it small and you keep it simple, then it's pretty doable. And then it's not that risky, because your risk is contained to that one deal until you've got your systems in place and you can do it. And then the risks are, there's a lot of risks. There's a lot of things that can go wrong, and a lot of those have to do, well, there's the market price. Did you buy it at a cheap enough rate? Do you know the market? Like, do you know what it can sell for if you fix it up to a certain level? Some people don't buy it cheap enough, and so that's mistake number one. It's not a good enough deal, so there's not enough margin to actually put the right amount of money into it to sell it for what it needs to sell to make it profitable. But the bigger factor is the contracting, the construction. That's where I found the biggest risks, because you don't know exactly what you're going to need to fix in it. Like when you're walking the property, you can grossly underestimate. It's easy to underestimate how much work it's going to take to get this thing up to a speed to where somebody's going to buy it and want it, because there's lots of hidden issues.
Yeah, you don't know what's behind that wall.
You don't know what's going on all the time. You don't know if the furnace is bad. You can do a lot of inspection, and you can be pretty thorough up front. And the more thorough you are up front, then the more likely are you to succeed. When I was buying houses, a lot of times we'd buy them sight unseen. Like, I would literally be driving around at night looking at 20 houses that were going on the auction block the next day. We wouldn't look inside of them. We would just see it, and we'd have to go make a bid. We'd get inside, and the craziest stuff would happen. But on those, we would bid pretty low, But you basically, you got to estimate what it's gonna take to fix it up in order to get your sell price. And then the other big factor is, do you have a contractor who's reliable and who can get it done for that price and who can get it done at good quality? That's a huge factor, and it's not a given that you're going to be able to find good, reliable work and help, because the really good people already kind of have their people they're working with a lot of the time, or they're really busy, or they're really expensive, or a lot of factors involved, So if you're getting a really cheap labor, you're also getting usually really cheap quality and bad performance, and so there's nothing easy about the construction business, the fix and flip business. I mean, it can be simple, and if you get the right people in place, it can be beautiful and it can work great. There's also just a bunch of things that can go wrong. And again, those are the contractor could not work out great. And if that happens and you've got, and your construction budget doubles, you just wiped out all your profit. And then pretty soon you could be paying money to get rid of this house. And that happened to me numerous times, more times than I can count, that I lost money on deals because that whole process went bad.
It was generally on the construction.
It was generally on the construction side that screwed everything up. The construction or the management of the construction, because part of it was not having the best people, but part of it was not being the best person, like not being actually a good manager. That's actually probably where the biggest factor is, because you can get laborers, if you're on top of them, you'll see when there's a problem fast and you get them out of there and get a new person. But for me, I was heavily reliant upon these general contractors or these construction workers, and I wasn't going by the house every day. I wasn't on top of everything. I wasn't like managing it very tightly because I had too many going, and because that wasn't my forte. I didn't really like managing the details. So that bit me in the butt like a lot of times.
Yeah, I can see that happening because, like I said, we own a couple properties, and trying to stay on top of getting things fixed for a reasonable price is it's not an easy thing.
It takes effort, yeah. It takes a little consistent effort, and yeah.
So when you had mentioned margins earlier, when you're buying a property and you got to put some rehab into it, what are the margins you're looking for to protect yourself?
I would have a spreadsheet, and I would make sure I'm factoring in all my selling costs. Like, okay, what is it going to sell for? What's the range that's going to sell for between 200 and 240? Okay, with the low side. I'm going to take the low side. Yeah, there's a high side potential, but I got to go off the low side. And then I'm going to say, how much profit, actual dollars, do I want to make on this deal, on the minimum, and say it's 30,000. Okay, now that means I've got to minus that out, and then I've got to factor in my purchase price and the repairs. And on the repairs, I've got to have like a low side and a high side. And so I got to get all that in there and make sure that there's that profit margin amount. Usually, again, it wasn't like a percentage for me. It was usually a dollar amount that I'm like trying to make sure we're hitting, at a minimum, hitting 30,000 or whatever it was. If you're doing a $500,000, $600,000 house, then that minimum needed to be 70 or 80,000. Bottom line is you just have to run those figures and know what you're comfortable with, and you need to make sure you're going on the worst case scenario on the construction budget, because you're going to have a range. Work against the worst case, and then work against the worst case on the selling price, like what you're going to sell it for. Because if you're trying to work on best cases, you're going to get squeezed on both ends. You're going to lose money all the time.
Yeah, then you're gambling, right?
Well, the whole thing is gambling still, because even you're always mitigating risk. I guess you could say the whole thing is a risk mitigation thing. I don't know if it's called gambling, but other than just business in general can be considered that. But like, it is a risky business, house flipping. And whereas like house renting, it's much less risky, because you're not trying to sell quickly. You have much broader time horizons. You have time for markets to go up. There's a lot more forgiveness in the rental game than there is in the fix and flip game. It's really time sensitive. It's really cost sensitive. You got to really be on it. My rental businesses, I haven't had to hardly be on them at all, and they all just work out great in the end, because you wait 10 years and the markets go crazy, and all of a sudden you just made a bunch of money. I mean, not all of a sudden, but you end up making a lot, even if you don't manage them perfectly along the way. The markets eventually are going to go up, and you're going to have equity, and as long as you can maintain the cash flow, as long as you can hold on to the property, not lose money along the way or whatever, then you'll eventually do really great if you're holding things long enough. What I do now is what I would recommend to anybody is align yourself with investment opportunities where there's amazing operators in place already. The system and the situation is proven. The asset class is solid and reliable and safe, and you don't have to manage it and have a job. You can actually just put the money in and have it pay back cash flow and have it be secure. Like that's what I'm doing now. It's not like I wouldn't recommend getting rental properties. Rental properties is also great. It's just more, you do have to manage it. You've got to put in your time and effort into managing it. There's a learning curve to property management and knowing how to be a landlord and knowing and just the hassles and the headaches of that. So like what I do now personally is I actually just invest into funds, into like a mobile home park. Most of my money, I've sold most of our houses and we've moved it all into mobile home park funds with a big operator who's like one of the fastest growing operators in the country. And we now I own a piece of like thousands of different home sites across the country, and I just get regular quarterly cash flow. I have the same benefits of tax depreciation. I have the same benefits of like appreciation on the parks. I have cash flow. I have basically all the same benefits, but none of the detriments. And the detriments being that I have to personally manage it. I have to have negative cash flow sometimes because I have a vacancy. You know, there's a lot of challenges with owning your own rental properties, as you're probably aware. There's upsides and downsides, you know. But for me, like now, I've moved more into the passive role and getting into assets where they are just consistent. And it's like, and the reason I love mobile home parks, the reason I've moved into that since 2015 almost exclusively, is it's the safest asset class out there. It's the most secure asset class of any type of real estate asset class. And what I mean by that is in all of the recessions over the last 30 whatever years, if you look at how the trends are going, like houses or apartment complexes or offices, they go up and down. And like in 2008, when everything crashes, apartments take a hit, commercial takes a hit, everything's taking these huge hits. Mobile home parks just keep going up.
Why is that?
Well, it's the cheapest housing in the country. So think about it, like it's the cheapest place to live. Everybody needs a place to live, and it's the cheapest. Like, and people own their own houses there. So there's just not like in these recession economies, I mean, people are flowing down from the more expensive to the less expensive. Eventually they got to live somewhere, and you've got the cheapest housing in the country and there's a shortage of it. That's the best explanation I could say, is like it's a quality place to live, and it's the cheapest by far. It's cheaper than apartment complexes. And so that's what I understand why it's been so consistent. The numbers just don't lie, though. If you look at the actual reports from the REITs and all the reports that are out there, it's just that asset class has never taken dips. Sometimes it's flatlined a little, but it just keeps going up and up. And so for me, after the last recession, I was like, houses are generally great, but they're a little more volatile. Real estate in general is great for the long term, but among the real estate, the best, the most secure, the most profitable over the time is the mobile home parks, because of all those reasons, and they are just and that's what the data shows. And so we've just moved heavily into that, and it continues to prove out. It's been a great asset class. And so now most of our passive cash flow is in mobile home parks.
And you said you get that quarterly?
Yeah, quarterly. We just get quarterly distributions. Yeah.
And so you specifically found this group.
Yeah.
It's one of the fastest growing. So
well, he's actually a friend of mine. He actually started the company 5 years ago, and he came to me as he was starting it with advice, coming to me for advice on raising capital. And so his very first fund, I was the one who raised the capital for that fund. And then shortly thereafter, he outgrew me significantly, and he started buying tons of mobile home parks because he had dialed in the system and he had built up a company. And so now the company has like 400 employees. I mean, this is like 6 years later. He's grown from 0 to like 400 employees. And every year for the last 5 years, I've been contributing to raising capital. I've been helping raise funds, but I haven't been the majority capital raiser because it's been like $150 million a year. Like we've been buying $600 million worth of assets per year for the last like few years. And so he's just gone really big, but they're just really impressive, and they really got an amazing system, and they're really doing a lot of good for the tenants. Their whole mission is to preserve affordable housing in the country, which is really like a beautiful mission to me, and I really love being a part of that, to be making a difference by like making these communities better, by preserving them from being developed into high rises and stuff, by keeping this affordable housing option available, and by making it better and improving upon it and adding community programs to it. So I'm a part of this beautiful company with a friend that, like, I'm a small part in the company, meaning that I've just brought in money. I'm like a fundraising partner, and I've invested a lot ourselves, all of our own capital. is going into there, but like they've got hundreds of investors now, and I've personally brought in dozens of investors because we contribute to helping raise capital for them. But most of my own personal stuff is in that because it's just consistent, it's reliable, it's high cash flow, it's zero. I don't pay any tax on the gains because of all the depreciation. It's just got all the best things of all the real estate that I've learned, and it's all passive because I've got this team that's amazing. Like my partner, his operation is just world class. Like he's just an amazing operator, and so I don't have to be that. I don't have to do that work.
Yeah, you're just kind of piggybacked on his world-class team.
Yeah, exactly. I'm bringing my expertise, which is bringing the money. I'm contributing my own money, and I'm bringing other money in, and I'm getting compensated for that. And then now I spend time doing things that I love, like coaching and doing other types of stuff that is more my forte than like managing projects. That was never really my forte or my desire.
I think for a lot of us, the whole thing about real estate and creating cash flow is the end result. The end goal is freedom.
Yeah, exactly. Right? Financial freedom. And if you're sitting there swinging a hammer or you're managing stuff and you have a full-time job, you're not really free yet.
Yeah.
Right?
If I have 40 Ferraris and no time to drive them, what good is it, right?
Yeah.
So the mobile home park is really an interesting thing. There's a stigma, right?
Yeah.
But you mentioned that his group is going and raising the value.
Yeah, totally. It's raising the value, they're raising the value by improving upon these communities, like really like trimming trees, repaving, getting rid of old houses and putting brand new houses and making them really nice communities. Actually, there's nonprofits that work with us that we're getting in there to do community programs and education programs for the tenants and for the owners and like financial education. There's a lot of good that we're actually able to be doing in there, which is really, really beautiful, really exciting to me. And I'm actually also working with other nonprofits that are building these types of communities for the homeless. There's a lot of good being done in this space. I'm working for it in the profit sector by investing in these communities. I'm also working in the nonprofit sector by supporting and raising capital for purely nonprofits that are building these communities to get homeless people off the streets. And that's another whole beautiful thing that I've just recently become involved in. But it's in the same space, and it's in an area that I see as like, there's a huge need. There's a huge need for affordable housing. The need is getting worse every day as things continue to progress, and so being part of that feels really good to me. It feels good to me to be creating passive income while also supporting and that sector of the population that really needs support and help.
So let's stay with mobile homes because I really like everything you've said. You're also coaching and teaching people. So if you were coaching somebody who wants to get into the real estate market and start to invest, start to create cash flow, and say I'm interested in mobile home parks, how would you direct me to get involved in that?
Within mobile home parks, the best thing I can direct people to is the fund that I'm involved in, and once a year we start a new fund. And so like there's numerous other places out there, but I don't know them. I haven't vetted them. I have only been involved personally in this one group, and of the things I've looked at, it's the best one that I've found. So that's really the only coaching I would give. I'd give it to you right now. You could call me and I could turn you on to that, and I could make that available or show you how to get involved in that particular fund. Otherwise, I don't actually have contacts, or I don't really know a lot of the other options for getting into it. It's actually not that easy to get into the mobile home park space because there's a lot of real estate operators and developers that are doing apartments, tons of apartment developers all over because there's way more apartments than there are mobile home parks. Mobile home parks is kind of a limited, really scarce kind of asset class. There's not that many, and they're not building tons of new ones. And a lot of them are already bought up and owned by these big, huge corporations like Blackstone and others. So it's not that easy to get into the mobile home park space. But if people want to know how to get in, they can certainly reach out to me and contact, and I can refer them to the group that we're with. Yeah.
If, like you said, you haven't vetted others. If you were going to vet, like you found somebody, you found the right guy, right?
Yeah.
He's doing the right. They're doing the right thing. If you were going to vet a different company, what are you looking for?
Yeah, so I'm looking for a good management team. I'm looking for their track record. I'm looking for are they trustworthy? And this would be the same on vetting anybody that I'm investing in, right? Whether it's mobile home parks or apartments or any kind of deal, you want to know who I want to know who are these people and what is their track record and their trustworthiness on management, and like what's their capability of managing. Are they doing a great job? Do they have a great track record? Do they have good references? Do they, the who of the management is critically important in my view, like from a trust standpoint. And then it's the what of the deal. Does this deal make sense? Are the numbers adding up? And so I would actually look into, like, is the return that they're offering to me, is that good enough? Is that satisfactory to me? Is the overall return, are they paying distributions? I would be wanting to make sure I'm getting cash distributions at least quarterly. I wouldn't want to get into a deal where they're like, we're going to pay you 10 years from now. There's deals like that. A lot of people invest in businesses and things like that. For me personally, I'm looking for cash flow. So I want to make sure that this deal has cash flow plus growth.
Do you see the mobile home park market growing? Like you said earlier, there's not a lot of new ones. And like I can't think of the last time I went by a place that looked like, it's a new.
I think it's just starting to change. Like over the last 20 years, there hasn't been many new ones at all because they don't allow, municipalities are like, not in my backyard. I don't want that mobile home park. The stigma, the negative stigma about a mobile home park from a municipality standpoint is like they've been shunned, So the ones that are there, but they're not building in a lot of new ones. But like with community villages, these in Austin, they are like, I think it's called Community First Villages. They are building a new one in Austin, but it's like a nonprofit thing, and they've got it approved by the community and everything. I've seen a couple others in the country. There's definitely new ones being built in certain places, and so I think the stigma might be changing. And I think as this problem has become bigger and bigger, and especially since like there's new like tiny homes and there's like the new type of small homes being built are more aesthetically pleasing, and they're more like people are liking it more, and it's so I think the trend is changing to where we're going to start seeing more of these small or tiny home communities, mobile home park communities that are like tiny home communities. I think we're going to see more and more of it. It's new. It's like we're at an early phase of that.
Have you dabbled in the tiny home community, the tiny home section?
Yeah, like I have a friend that I was working with raising capital for a little bit. That's another friend that is building one, a 240 unit one in South Carolina. So like, yes, like I've got, and then this one with the nonprofit is that it's a tiny home community. That's been my involvement so far, and it's highly intriguing to me. I think there's tons of opportunity for impact in that space. Like there's a lot of need, and so it makes so much sense to be utilizing that model to be providing and creating more affordable housing, which is just in such a scarcity right now.
It's kind of funny how a tiny home community is cool
and a mobile home
park is not, even though that might be a bigger living space.
Yes, exactly. And they're actually potentially similar. Some of the tiny homes are as big as some of them. Anyway, there's different sizes of tiny homes. But yes, it is interesting, just the look of the house and the different name. All of a sudden, people are like, yeah, that's cool, and that's not.
Yeah, one's hip and one's definitely not.
Yeah.
So go back into rentals, because again, I think for so many of us, creating passive income and cash flow is the road to freedom, right? Yeah. I don't want to get into real estate and trade my 40-hour-a-week job for a 75-hour-a-week job, right?
Yeah.
So if you're helping somebody get into that space, so one, you talk about finding money through your friends and contacts. Mm-hmm. You didn't go to a bank at all.
I mean, I have,
but
that wasn't the primary thing. Yeah.
So you structured deals so that if you came to me as your best friend and made it attractive and almost bulletproof.
Yeah.
And you did that, again, how?
It's simply just making you the bank. It's literally no different than it's no different than, it's just pretend like you, James, you're the bank instead of Wells Fargo. I'm coming to you instead of going to Wells Fargo. If you were Wells Fargo, you would give me a loan on the thing and I'd pay you X% of interest. And so that's it. All I'm doing is making it, the structure in that case is saying to you, hey friend, I'm going to buy this house. Will you be the lender on the house? You'll get a first position. This is the key to the structure. You get a first position mortgage on the house.
And I'm sorry, for those of us,
Yeah.
what do you mean by first position?
So
mortgage?
that's like, it's called a lien, a mortgage or a lien. Like when you get a loan from a bank, Chase or Wells Fargo or anything, the thing that they do to protect themselves is they put a lien on the house, which means that it's called a mortgage in most states or a deed of trust in other states. So the bank is essentially going to the county and saying, hey, we have given a loan on this house and we are enforcing a lien on this house in first position, meaning if these people don't pay as agreed, we have the right to go to you and foreclose, and the county will then send the sheriff and evict them, and we can then go and repossess this property. That's why it's called first position, because there's first position and there's second position and third position. If I'm the bank, if I'm Chase, and I have a first position loan on your house, and you don't pay me, I'm going to be like, I'm taking your house. You need to move out. I'm going to start the foreclosure process, and you're going to need to move unless you pay me. And then they move. But if I'm like Wells Fargo and I have a second position loan, I've put a HELOC on. You've got a HELOC on your house. You've got a first position and you've got a HELOC. Well, that HELOC is going to have to pay off the first guy to recover his money. So it's not as safe. That's what I mean by first position. Like that HELOC is a more risky loan because if you don't pay the HELOC's going to be like, hey, I'm going to foreclose also. And they're going to kick you out. But before they can kick you out, they got to pay this guy off. The HELOC people are going to have to go. And what if there's not that much equity? They may not want to pay that guy off because the house value went down or something. So that's what I mean by first position. And so when I'm offering to you as an investor, I'm saying, hey, you're in first position. That means you're in the most safe position. That means if anything goes wrong, if I can't pay you, or if I die, or if I fraud, if I cheat or do whatever, if it doesn't work out for whatever reason, you could just go and take the house, and then you can sell the house and you can recover your money because you're in first position. You have basically the first right to foreclose and take that house. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So when you went to your father, right,
Yeah.
and you go to your friends, et cetera, how official are you making this? You having documents,
Yeah.
right? Because they're the bank.
Yeah.
So-
There's just specific documents that you can get from any title company, and it's just like a deed of trust and a promissory note. That's generally what it is. In all the states that I've worked in, I'm saying, hey, okay, friend, what we're going to do is we're going to go to a title company, and just like in any other house transaction, when we go to the title company, they're going to prepare these closing documents, and one of them is going to be a loan, a promissory note where I promise to pay you $100,000 at X% interest, and then there's going to be a deed of trust that's going to get recorded as a lien on the property. The title company is going to do all this. All you do is you wire money to the title company. They make sure that all the documents are signed and that they're recorded and that you're protected because you're the lender, and you've now got your deed of trust recorded on the property. And before they release title to me, they're going to make sure you're taken care of. They're going to make sure you're secured, and then they're going to release title to me, and I'm going to have the keys to the house. So yeah, it's all just it's no different than if you were the bank, except that you're a person and you have all the legal documents. You don't have as extensive of legal documents as a bank. It's really just those two documents, a promissory note and a deed of trust. The banks get into all sorts of these huge document stacks, but effectively they're using the same thing. They just have longer versions of them.
Yeah. So you're still utilizing the title company the way
Yeah.
you would any other way.
Yeah, because you're wanting to get clean title. You're wanting to make sure you get title insurance. Because when I'm buying the house from somebody, I want to make sure that I get a clear title to the house, that everything's, so that when I go to sell it, that I can give the title away cleanly. I mean, everything runs through a title company.
And that's another piece of the financial puzzle you have to work into your.
Yeah, it's a cost.
Numbers.
You're paying $1,000 or a couple $1,000s to the title to do the title work and stuff. Yeah, you got to factor all those costs into the whole thing.
What kind of return are you looking for with this mobile home?
I mean, it's like in 13 to 15% annual yield over the life of the thing. So it's pretty solid.
It's pretty solid.
Yeah, especially when you're not paying tax on that. It's pretty good.
So you've now found a niche that really works for you, where your money is working for you passively,
Yeah.
gives you more time to do what your new passions are in
Sure.
helping people.
Yeah.
In helping people, you're still steering people toward. I mean, You talked about helping people align, but people still need to have income. You still directing them towards real estate as a way to achieve that?
I mean, if that's what it just depends upon the person. Like whatever somebody's coming to me for help in, if they're coming for me to help in income, then I will help them find whatever's blocking them in that regard. It's like they might have some emotional challenge or some kind of deep thing that's kind of blocking them from really like moving forward in their life. And that might be blocking them in their business and their income. That might be blocking them. As a coach, as a breakthrough coach, I'm less in the advising people on where to go and more into turning them inward to themselves to find the answers, to find the clarity on what's going on. And so I actually don't do really any advising. I'm a guide more than anything, a guide in helping people get unstuck and unblocked and realizing that their wisdom, they have all the wisdom within themselves, which is beautiful. And that doesn't mean that there's not advice out there. If somebody wants specific advice on how to do real estate, that may not be within somebody's, that's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to like their capacity to really find what is true for them and really guidance from like higher sources, from their self, like higher meaning them. I believe there's a lot of wisdom in the body, and that's just body, mind, heart, spirit. It's all connected, and there's just a lot of wisdom there. So I'm helping people in that regard.
I want to stay with this because I find it very interesting. And even so with real estate, and again, I know there's a lot of us on this side of it that want to get involved, and there's a fear factor to get past.
That
right?
is what I'm talking about.
What
is blocking you? It's less about knowing what to do, and it's more about what is blocking you from actually like stepping into what you know. That's the thing. Like so many of us, we know a lot of things. We hear all these things and exciting. We think we could do that, but then we don't do it. We don't take action, or then we stay in these hard relationships, or then we stay in these habits and ruts. We basically are blocked by these invisible ceilings in our lives. And that's what I'm most passionate about, is helping people go inward and heal the things that are literally blocking them, their greatest fears and their greatest insecurities and their inner wounds, things from their childhood and things that have been blocking them subconsciously their entire lives, and they don't even know. We don't even know what's blocking us. We don't understand. We don't see. We're not aware generally of what's stopping us, because if we were, it wouldn't be stopping us anymore. And so we have these fears and we have these subconscious blocks. And what I do now as a breakthrough coach is I hold space for people to tune in to their body, to notice sensations even in their body, and to actually be able to listen to what that's saying, and listen as that thing inside of them actually draws them to memories of parts of their lives. And as we go into those things, it starts to open awarenesses of things. There's beautiful processes that I've been trained and learned in to really go through this healing process for people that then aligns their energy, clears up these fears, and allows people to see more clearly and start to move beyond previous limitations in any area. And it's really whatever they're ready for, whatever their body and their mind and their heart and spirit is ready to show them. It's not like me trying to say, oh, you need to see this. I actually just guide them to listening to their body, and then amazing breakthroughs unfold, and it's pretty fun.
Well, if I can get personal, what did you have to learn about you to get to where you are?
There's been so many, like the different type of breakthroughs you're saying?
Yeah, just one or two.
I mean, just the most recent thing, for an example, the most recent thing was learning that when I was 5 years old, I had an internal process where I went back to, as a 5-year-old, I remembered getting scolded by my father and sat on the bench next to him as he was reading his paper. He'd put me in timeout, and I was sitting there on this hard, cold fireplace because I was being too loud and having too much fun. And so my father would read his newspaper, and he was a great, nice man, but I was too loud for him. And what I learned at that age and what I realized was that it was not okay to be me, that it was not okay to have fun and be playful, that I needed to be serious. So I embedded that lesson into my life, which made it not okay to be me, which affected everything in all of my relationships ever since, which made me have to go try to prove myself. It made me have to go, it's been affecting me in everything. Like there's not an area that hasn't affected me in my life. And so just coming into awareness of that recently, it's opening the space for me to reprogram, repattern, to change the ways that I relate with my children, with my wife, to see how that was impacting me and see how it was causing me to not really even know who I was, to not be giving permission to be the playful person that is like my essence and my nature. So I've been stunting so many things, and it's been blocking me. This is just super recent. You're asking me, like, this is one thing that I learned in the last.
It's a process.
I'm in this process as of right now. I only kind of became aware of this a week and a half ago. So, but those are the types of things that I've been going through for years, and that I guide people into, to start becoming aware of that. And it's the body that like takes you into that awareness. And so it's like, it's a beautiful thing that then you're like peeling back layers of an onion internally, which then allows us to step more fully into who we are. And then everything changes and shifts, and we make decisions from different places. And it's not about, oh, do I know all the right things? It's more about, who do I show up as in all that I do? It's who I am. It's revealing more of who we are, which then enables us to make so much progress in so many different areas. And that's one of the things that fascinates me most about it. What I love about being in that work with people is it will help people with their finances. It will help people with their relationships. It will help people with every aspect of their life as we start to like become more of who we truly are. So
Thank you.
yeah.
Aaron, I thank you so much. I learned a lot. I loved your conciseness about flips. Right? I mean, for those who want to get into flips, just know what you're doing. There's good money involved. But how you went out and found money through friends and family and were able to make that profitable and worthwhile and a really good bet for them is really intriguing, because we all have friends and family.
And the one thing I would say on that to wrap is that like we all do know people, and the only thing holding us back from going and creating those opportunities for them is fear. And so it's like I had to overcome that in order to do it. But everybody, no, I don't care who you are, has the capacity. If you really wanted to, if you could go and raise capital from people, you could go and make enough phone calls and talk to enough people. Like it's only fear that's blocking people. It's not because we have to know all these wealthy people. It's like, I just want to put that out there.
No, I think it's very true, and I can imagine that if I find the right deal and structure it correctly, that it's a win-win. I would feel like the fear level drops considerably when I come to you as my best friend and went, I know this is a little different, Aaron, but
But if you're confident in the deal, you understand, you know that you can protect them, then yes, then you've got a lot more confidence going out and raising the money. If you're not confident in it and you're not sure that you can protect them, then don't go sell it to them. Don't go try to get somebody to do something that is not good for them, that you don't know for sure is good for them,
Yeah, so I think you had that.
I had that for sure. Like I knew that this deal made sense to me. I knew that my dad was going to be protected. I knew that those investors were protected. I understood the deal, and therefore I had the confidence to go and present it to them and authentically say, this is how it works and this is where you're protected. And I'm going to do this, and when I do my job, you're going to do, everything's going to work, So it requires being authentic for sure in order for that to work. If you're not, people see through that. They don't invest in you. They don't trust you because they know you don't know what you're doing. They can sense that, So.
And then you used that to build your portfolio, built cash flow, then moved into passive so you can do what you want.
Yeah.
Best real estate book you ever read?
The one that comes to mind is the one that started me on, which was Millionaire Real Estate Investor by Gary Keller. There's tons of other good ones, but that one got me going. So
I like the first one because it started you on the path that got you where you want to be.
Yeah.
Aaron, thanks so much for your time and
thank you, James.
and some really interesting insight to the mobile home park. It's such a different way to look at mobile homes than I think most of us traditionally do.
Yeah. Well, thanks for having me on.
That completes James's interview with Aaron Kennard. Love Aaron, great guy, terrific information, knows how to distill it down, make it simple and actionable. So I appreciate the fact that he shared his information with us and that you were here to witness it. Flipping homes seems to be a very popular subject. As a matter of fact, I even make reality shows about this. In this next interview, James sits with Matt Strong, and Matt Strong has made a career out of this. If you want to do this, if this is your path into real estate, this next interview is going to be extremely important for you. And if you're not sure, it's also going to be important that you learn what it takes to be able to identify, buy, and flip homes and make money doing it. This is a great interview. Enjoy.
Matt Strong, again, thanks so much for being here. I'm really looking forward to picking your brain. How long you been in this space?
Oh man, I bought my first house in 1999, but really as an investor, the end of 2004. Just real quick, I was working at a company that we did self-directed health plans for medium to large size employers here in Utah. And it was about that time that I was able to get enough salary or whatever to afford my first home. And so that was really how it was. I ended up buying a brand new home from Ivory Homes. But this is what kind of got me into real estate was I'm terrible at negotiating, I think, but I'm asking them, well, I'm not coming here with a realtor, will you give me 3% off? And they said, well, no, but if you are an agent, we will pay a 3% commission. And I'm like, great, I'm an agent. And so I got my license after that, and by the time I closed on the property, I was able to buy that first home, which was our family home, with really no money out of pocket because I pledged my commission, which I had earned by then. And then the builder was doing a promo for no closing costs if you went with their preferred lender. And so that was my first experience in real estate, was buying my first house, which I really got into no money out of pocket. So that kind of always stuck with me. It's like, this is a really cool way. You can buy, back then it was a $153,000 house for basically no money out of pocket. How can I do that again? It took me about 4 years of, because then I became a sales agent for Ivory. I'm like, this is kind of cool. I want to get into real estate. So I did the sales agent thing, but that was just more selling homes. I didn't really start investing until about the end of 2004, started 2005.
All right. That's really intriguing. I want to unpack that earlier. So I understand. I mean, I thought that was a reasonable request. Like, I didn't bring an agent, so give me 3%.
Yeah.
That you'd have to pay, but they wouldn't do that? Is that a legality
Yeah,
thing?
that was just kind of that builder's policy.
Okay.
Maybe the way to negotiate. Now that you rephrase it that way, I don't know if I ever would have actually gotten into real estate had they not challenged me that I couldn't get a discount if I wasn't coming with an agent. Because I figured it was built in. It's like, well, if they're paying realtors to come bring them buyers. If I don't have a realtor, why can't I just benefit from that discount myself? And but man, maybe my path would have led to I would have eventually got into real estate. But that cemented me with getting my license. So I had my real estate license, and then it was kind of like, well, now that I have it, it's already benefited me. I should do something more with it. Mm-hmm. And so that's when I got curious about, well, maybe I'll start selling homes for the people I just bought a home from. So I stayed there at Ivory Homes for 4 years, from about 1999 to 2004.
All right, I'm going to say, so this first home, this was your personal home, right?
Yep.
So you like signed the contract that you were going to buy it, and in that, between that and closing,
I think I had a month.
You got your real estate license?
I got my license. My uncle was a broker, so it was an easy insert to house my license with a broker. And then he was nice enough to say, oh, it's your own deal. I'm not going to keep any of the commission as the broker. You can just credit that full 3%. And back then, not that they don't exist now, they obviously still do, but it was an FHA, 3% down program. And then the builder paid my loan closing costs. So it was such a sweet deal. I was into it, no money out of pocket.
All right. So you got in your first house.
Yep.
And you immediately decided this is cool?
I immediately decided this is interesting. Now, the builder, great builder, I still really think they're one of the best builders in the state. But really for me, it ended up being like, I always joked, is like I was just selling real expensive Nordstrom product. It was like, people would come in, that builder did such a great job marketing. It was like, I want the Newbury floor plan. It's like, great, thank you. You kind of just had to smile and be there, a live body in the seat. And it became not very challenging for me over time. Back then when I was, 20, 22, 23, it was good, exciting money. But I'm like,
So you quit the healthcare and went
I
into
did.
that
Yeah.
right away.
Right away, yeah. So I quit the healthcare, got right into selling homes, just at a model home like you would expect, on the corner of a busy subdivision. And so I did that for 4 years. But what I learned was, this is probably not what my future self wants me to be doing. Like I just, at some point it wasn't challenging for me. It was just sitting there in the model waiting for people to come in. If you happen to be in the right location, you made more money, or if the product that you were selling was more expensive than, a neighboring property. It was like, I didn't feel like I had any control over I did a little bit, right? Like if you didn't know how to talk to people, they were going to be bugged and would leave. But I just didn't feel like I was being challenged. But I also knew I kind of have this expectation of income, because, it's all commission, but they do such a good job plowing people through their models. Like I would always kind of joke too, 80% of the homes I sold, probably a monkey could have sold just by saying, hey, I'm here, sign here. They do a really good job of marketing. So it was about that time, a buddy of mine from high school started talking to me about how he was representing guys that were buying bank-owned properties. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. Talk to me more about that. And so after I learned a little bit more about it, I was still hesitant to leave Ivory because it was, even though it wasn't a W-2 job, it was consistent enough deal flow, or it was almost as if it was like a W-2. So, I had a growing family, a couple kids now at this point, one more coming on the way. And so I said, well, let's do a couple while so I was double dipping for a little bit. I'd still be working the model, but then we'd go and find these properties that, this was, the end of 2004. So the market was still kind of going pretty well, but Utah has always had a lot of distressed sales with foreclosures and bankruptcies and stuff like that. So there was a lot of inventory to look at. But homes relative to what they are now were so cheap. I remember our first house we bought was $90,000 out in Kearns. That same house today is $475,000, right? And so we did a couple flips while I was still at Ivory, just so I could see okay, this is going to work. This is going to work.
Who did the work? So
even to this day, I've done close to 450 flips. It would take me a week to change a toilet. It's not my skill set. What I learned was my skill set was more being buddies with the guys that knew how to do it and then directing traffic and letting them kind of do their thing. So we started hiring handyman, painters, plumbers, kind of jack of all trades. And we started with easy houses, 1,000 square foot homes, nothing too big of scope of work. And we just kind of blew through 3 or 4 of those. And that finally gave me the comfort level of going, okay, I can do 10 of these in a year or whatever. I can quit now. And so that's when things got real exciting for me, is when I left that commission role of a new home sales agent to more of a full-time investor, where my source of income 100% depended upon me or my partner going out, finding that distressed, undervalued home that had potential to be rehabbed and then sold at a higher price with hopefully, profit in the middle for us.
You think you always had that entrepreneurial mind?
I don't think I did, to be honest with you. I wasn't, you hear the stories of the guy I started my first company when I was 10. It's no, I didn't. I really didn't. I don't think I knew what it was all about. And I'm still probably trying to learn now, what it's like to be an entrepreneur and how to get better at it. But what I did like and what I do like is seeing value being created. And that's where I found my niche in real estate, is taking something that someone didn't do a good job with, whether it was because they neglected it or just time neglected it, and seeing a vision for how that could look with a little bit of dollars spent and time into the property to getting it to a value that's significantly higher than what it is today. So that value add, that value creation, I think is what kind of hooked me on real estate, not so much being an entrepreneur. There for the first few years, it would still terrify me, thinking, man, are we going to have another deal? What if this one doesn't go well? I've certainly lost plenty of money on deals as well. So it's that value creation, seeing something go from here to here with all the different pieces of the puzzle in between of what it takes to get there.
So how'd you procure the first couple?
So back then, just a quick overview.
Yeah.
Man, there's so many different ways you can do it. There's deals out there for everybody. I really believe in that. And there's different ways of finding those deals. Some people are better calling people on the phone. For those that watch this, if you've ever been in a spot, unfortunately, where maybe you've been late on payments or you've had some financial hardship, odds are throughout the years as technology's gotten more creative and database of lists of people have gotten more accessible, you're getting phone calls, you're getting mailers from investors saying, hey, we buy your house. Now, if you pay attention, you see on the road, you say, we buy ugly houses, in need of I'm always looking to pay cash for a house. So you can go that's called direct to seller, where you go direct to the seller, however that is, whether they want you to or not. You're knocking on their door, you're sending them a mailer. There's so much public data information out there. Sometimes people are like, how do they get this info? It's like, there's lists, But I relied on just the power of the local realtor multiple listing service. So when, in my case back then, how I found most of my properties, banks would foreclose on a home. They would take that home back, and then that would be called real estate owned, or short REO properties. REO, bank owned, foreclosure, basically they all mean something a little different, but they all mean the same thing. It's somebody that was in distress, had their home foreclosed on, the bank now owns it. The bank took it back. The banks then, they're not flippers. They don't want to own properties for different reasons. So then what they would do is they would contract with the local real estate agent to list the bank-owned properties or the REO properties on the MLS. And again, these properties usually were excluding a lot of different purchasers because they were, really bad condition. Maybe the carpet wasn't there anymore. Maybe there was, there's all sorts of horror stories about the condition of properties. But they usually required somebody to come in and pay cash or use hard money, which we'll probably talk about. And so how I found them, though, was just simply getting on the MLS access as a realtor, searching the different criteria that we'd come up with of how to analyze and find these undervalued properties, contacting the agents, going through them, doing our analysis, making an offer, and closing. And so that was kind of my life for, a few years. Wake up, hit the MLS, and you could automate some of the searches so it wasn't as time consuming. Do our analysis, make the offers, close.
What's in your analysis?
Well, that's a really good question. So I like to think of it like a math problem related to a house, right? So I always start with the end in mind, thinking, okay, if I were to put new cabinets in, new carpet, new paint, those things that the market wants to be able to get to what we call our after repair value or market value, or like what that home in that neighborhood, the best price it could ever possibly get. Right? So I back into everything and I say, okay, what is our ARV, our after repair value, or our sales price on the open market? Okay, great. Now what is it going to take to get there? We have our hard costs and our soft costs. The hard costs are basically going to be the labor, materials to remodel the home. Then you have soft costs, which are going to be your realtor fees, your title fees, your utilities, stuff like that. And then the other bigger pieces, which I'm more involved with now, is how are you going to pay for it? If it's cash, that number is zero. Other than you might have an opportunity cost of using the money for cash that's not in another investment, or hard money, or if you have time, a regular bank loan. So really you have your soft costs that are related to the transaction, which are like realtor, title fees, your hard costs of sticks and bricks, labor, and then your financing. So that whole stack goes into basically your spread, but we forgot one really important piece. We're not doing this for free. So you got to build in your profit margin. So I start with, let's just use an example. Say I can sell the home for $300,000. It's going to be $20,000 in soft costs, $30,000 in hard costs, $10,000 in repair. I want to make $20,000. The leftover number, that's what I offer.
So and what you want to sell it for, you're going off comps.
Exactly.
All right. And so you want to bring your property up how close? Do you want to go above it? Do you want to just go right below it? What's the art in that?
It's situational given what's going on in the market. We have seen over the last 2 years, really compressed since COVID hit, a crazy change in the market where inventory is so low. It's totally a seller's market, and there's way more buyers for homes than properties. So today we're pricing it, if the last comps that have sold were here, we're pricing it here. Now, rewind though, back in 2011, 12, you wanted to be the best property in the neighborhood at the lower price because it was the opposite. There was way more inventory than there were buyers for different reasons, right? The financing was harder to get. People's credit had been hammered because of whatever losses had come in the financial. So the answer is it's situational, but yeah, I mean, when you're doing your analysis as rehabber, you want to be as realistic as possible because you don't always want to be thinking that the market's never going to end and it's always going to go up and up and up. That's what got us into trouble in 2007, 2008, was everyone was speculating, saying, well, it's been going up 4% every month. I'm buying it with no spread for profit. I'm just assuming that in 5 months when it gets there, that's my 10% profit, because the values are going up, right?
All right. So it wasn't the financing that bit you. It was just the assumption that the property's going to, by the time we're done with this, the property's going to be worth 20 grand more.
Well, I hope I didn't act that way, but a lot of people did. And then they were buying like brand new homes and stuff like that. I mean, that's probably a whole other episode in of itself, right?
I knew some of those people.
Yeah. And it was too bad because, you get caught up in the hype. So that's the other part of this investing is when it's relative to your question there of like, where do you price thing, is at some point, it's got to be a logical process with a little bit of gut intuition, and you've got to take all emotion out of it. Just because it's your house doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to always get 5% of it. Ultimately, the market's going to tell you where it's at. And what the market's told people this last couple years is that we're way off, because what they thought was here, you get multiple offers, everything's selling here. But at some point, unfortunately, it's probably going to come back to where the comps 6 months ago were here, but yeah, we don't care anymore. There's more inventory and less demand. So now the price is here. Yeah. So that's where we lose money flipping, is we lose money in the market risk, like where we don't quite hit our target because it either goes up or down. Even though we did a really good job on the house, like we executed it, as we mapped out, but the market could turn on us. I'm okay losing money there because I did everything I could, And then the other complicated part of flipping is your scope of work, and especially that's been a challenge too these last couple of years is, lumber prices change. So you might think it's going to be a $50,000 rehab, but 3 months into it, you're like, well, crap, I can't get doors. They're twice as much, So you can lose on the, your overestimation of a rehab or underestimation of a rehab, or if you're not really good at, your valuation of what that property could be worth once remodeled.
So for quite a while, fix and flip, that was your job.
Yep.
Your business.
Yep.
And you had the same partner through all this?
Pretty much for the most part. Yep.
And financing?
Yeah. So the game of flippers is, when we first started, we had home equity line of credits on our primary residences that would allow us to basically do 1 or 2 houses at a time. Okay. Which is great for some people, but we were always like, how can we do more?
Yeah.
Right. And so we don't have enough cash or access to lines of credit on our own. So then we went to the space of finding a hard money lender. And a hard money lender is basically someone that focuses way more on the value proposition of the property than they do on the traditional things, like what's your W-2, what's your credit score, what's your ability to repay this over a 30-year term. We're talking short windows. Like if you're flipping good, you're in and out of properties in 4 to 6 months, depending on how complicated the rehab is. And so then we started borrowing from hard money lenders.
How did you find them?
There's different real estate clubs. It really, at the end of the day, real estate, probably like most businesses, is networking, asking for referrals, finding who's in the space, and or creating your own, which ultimately is what we did. We found a couple to get going that had already been lending to other flippers, and we just presented our case. Here's how we see the deal. And I can't remember back then. I think back then we were able to get our lender to fund us 100% of the purchase price and the rehab amount. So then all of a sudden, you just got to be really good at finding more deals and building out crews to support the number of houses that you have going on. So that's the cool thing about real estate. If you do it right, it's also what actually allows you to lose money too by leveraging in the wrong way. But then I could go from, instead of doing 2 properties, let's just make up some numbers. Let's say our lines of credit allowed us to have a couple $100,000 of working capital. And whereas before we could do 2 houses, buy them, rehab them, and then we're tapped out. But now, in theory, we could do, say, 10 houses with the same number of dollars, because we'll get a hard money lender to come in and fund the purchase for us. And then we'll use that money to infuse into the rehab of the properties. So if we're analyzing our properties right, yes, on each property, we will have a little higher cost of money because the hard money is not cheap.
Right.
However, if we do it right, we can turn that $200,000 of working capital, which otherwise would have allowed us to do 2 houses, into doing 10, because we're leveraging someone else's money as a lender, and that just allowed us to grow quick.
Okay.
So then what happens is, we realize, well, that guy was pretty expensive. How do we find cheaper money? So then it goes back to networking. Friends, family, old bosses, showing them the model. We'd already established a track record, so we could say, listen, this is how we've done it the last 10 times. This is how you'd fit into this puzzle. You'd be the lender. And then it's a slow game of but instead of doing it for 12%, could you do it for 9%? And so then we just kind of kept slowly building out our investors that would be our lenders, really, that would fund our fix and flips.
So how soon did you start using other people's money?
Almost by the 3rd or 4th one.
Really?
Yeah. Because the length of the time of a flip, you have some time constraints. It rarely will be at less than 3 months. So usually, historically, I'm in and out of most properties in 5 or 6 months. So if I've got 3 going with my own money, pretty soon I have nothing to do because I'm waiting on either a sale to close or I'm waiting on the rehab to get done, and I've already bought, And so we just realized, man, we could do a lot more if we had more money. How do we get more money? Do we feel confident that we could do more houses, that we could find more houses? Back then, finding houses was never, actually even today, finding houses has never been a problem. It's usually a resources of rehab crew and money to do it.
So even today, finding houses, because I think the last I saw, there were in the valley 350 properties.
Yeah.
And there's 10,000 real estate agents and
Yep.
people moving in here by the hour.
Yep.
So 350 properties in the valley. So does that not include distressed properties?
It probably doesn't accurately include all distressed properties. There is an off-market subset of properties that's hard to quantify versus the on-market number that you're talking about, which is through the Board of Realtors, through the active listings on the MLS. So,
yeah, everybody I know who sold a house recently, it went to auction an hour after they put it up, and they sold it for thousands, tens of thousands more than they were looking for.
Yeah. That's right. It goes back to it's a seller's market, right?
Yeah,
so
right.
People have gotten accustomed to getting whatever they want. But one lesson I learned about that when I was at Ivory is I remember my sales manager saying something to the effect of, you know what, there's all these building permits out there. You just got to go get your share. Whatever you share you think you should deserve or you could add value in the marketplace by getting, they're there for you. And I'm like, oh yeah, he's right. So even today, I have a flip that I'm closing on that I'm going to buy next week and another one in a week after that. So I've adopted this mindset of abundance that there's deals for you that may not be for me. There's deals for me that may not be for you. But bottom line is if I want it bad enough and I hunt hard enough and I ask the right questions and I'm in the right spot and I'm prepared and I know it sounds kind of corny, but those deals are out there. It's when you start saying, oh man, this is hard. I don't think I can find, man, I get bid out all the time. There's multiple offers. I didn't win the bid. You know what? There's deals out there. Now that may mean you might not do 100, but you might still do 50 or 75, So that abundance mentality, that mindset, I think is super huge.
I think it's really big and it's hard. I think it's particularly the last 2 years, right? This mentality of scarcity is creeping in on everybody.
Yep.
Even when you go to the stores and suddenly they're not stocked, right? Or everyone's fighting over toilet paper.
Yeah.
Right. So this mentality of scarcity, I think, has been creeping in on us, and it's not true. There's enough.
There is enough. And yes, one area to find houses might become scarce. like your point, there's 300, and this happens all the time today. There's 350 properties in the valley. Maybe, 50 of those are in a position where they really do need a lot of repair. Say there's 600 flippers. They're all of a sudden looking at these, so they're doing multiple offers. However, that's the lowest, easiest way to find properties, which is why when they were super abundant, that's all I did, because I didn't need to go anywhere else to find, for me anyway. Looking back now, I could have gotten a little bit more creative and probably found some better deals. But it's like, no, hit the MLS. Plus, I'm an agent. I'll get paid to buy my own property, because there's a commission there. But the last 2 or 3 years, I've gotten maybe a couple houses off the MLS, but the bulk of them are from my networking, my word of mouth. Find another agent who I know has access to deals that I want to have access. Let them double side the commission, So then, I don't care if I don't get paid. I still get the property. That's where I'm going to really make my money. Or you do your own direct to seller. You get, there's no rules other than to be moral, ethical, and legal. I'm still convinced if you are really good going door to door and you could just put up with the pain and suffering of being out there all day you would have more properties than you knew what to do with. So it's just putting in the time, the effort, and the belief.
So what lists are you looking at?
Well, I don't do a lot of direct to seller myself. However, the list that you would look for if you're looking for distressed properties are ones that are, they're kind of no-brainers when you talk about them. People going through divorce, an estate sale where someone just died. I know people that will hunt obituaries and, go to funerals. Yeah, you can get as aggressive as you want here with whatever you're comfortable with. But the most common lists are those ones that are already in a clear sign of financial distress. So normally if you miss your mortgage payment and you miss the third month or the 90th day you're late, the bank will file usually what's called a notice of default. That's a public record. So anybody out there halfway paying attention for these kind of lists, that's like the most bread and butter, low-hanging fruit list is the notice of default. And that is usually a really good list because someone's in financial distress. They're on the path to foreclosure. So those are lists people hunt all the time. Any list that would provide, eyeballs on like the condition of a property for like code enforcement. Say they're always getting yelled at for having cars in their front yard or something like that. Just signs of distress. And with tech, there's so many cool new ways to access people. You could have a virtual assistant drive by on Google Maps and every address where it looks like, man, that roof's old, man, those windows are old, we're sending a mailer there. Some sort of distress, whether it's financial, economic condition, or personal life. You could, I have guys that I know that just network exclusively with like bankruptcy or divorce attorneys, because there's something going on there. There's a sale that's going to happen.
People need help.
So it doesn't always have to be predatory, like, yeah, you're losing your house, I'm going to come pounce on it. Yeah, there are a lot of times it's a win-win. People don't know how to get out of that hole they've dug. They maybe still have equity in their home. They don't have a lot of time left before the bank's going to foreclose and take the property and their equity's gone. Yes, maybe they could have been more proactive. They could have lived life a little different, but that's where we're at in that moment. Yeah. So sometimes it is a win-win. I get a property that I can do something with that they couldn't have done something with. There goes back to that scarcity and abundance, right? They're like, their world is becoming like this. And when their world becomes like this, it's like, it's a great opportunity for someone like me. They can come in and buy it, add that value that they weren't able to add, and then resell it to, it's kind of a cool ecosystem. And then someone else is getting, hopefully what is a well-done house that's turnkey for them that they don't need to spend any money rehabbing.
So how many years in this?
Oh, well, what are we at here? Almost 18 years now. Yeah.
And then you've moved, so primarily fix and flip.
Uh-huh.
And then how has it morphed?
So
your trajectory.
Yeah, it's morphed. The fix and flip required a lot of contacts that had a lot of money that could help us fund our deals. There were some years where we were doing 60 houses in a year. So that required, we were always sitting on about 20 houses at a time. So 20 times by whatever our average price was, maybe purchase price, a couple $100,000, is $4 or $5 million that we needed to raise. And we didn't have it.
And the clock's ticking on all these, right?
The clock's ticking big time, right? So we got to be efficient. We got to be quick. We got to be organized, which we weren't always. That's where we'd lose money. And so we just developed a lot of different people that we gained trust with, that we paid back. Even during the downturn, unfortunately, I did have a foreclosure and some short sales back when the economic crash came. That was because I was not properly financed in between on some development deals I was trying to do. But anyway, that allows us to create a lot of confidence with our investors. And so then over time, people kept coming up to me. It's like, where do you get your money, man? Will you help me out? And so I'm like, yeah, I'll help you out. And so it's like, hey, John, I got my buddy Tim here. How about instead of doing the loan for me, can you just help him with the loan? And I didn't realize what I was doing, but I was kind of becoming a hard money lender, becoming a brokering two people. And what I found was like all of a sudden, again, it's like what you put out there in the universe, abundance. It's like then all of a sudden I kept getting more calls. Because again, behind the scenes in the real estate world, people always, it's like, even if I say, don't tell anyone, it's like, oh, hey, Matt can do this for you. So I had more and more people calling, and then also had more and more success with my investors where they're like, I got a little extra money. So then I'm like, let's do this. Let's make this a business. So now I do a lot more hard money lending than I do fix and flip. I still do fix and flip. Like I usually will still have 4 or 5 going at a time.
How many crews do you have?
Well, we'll expand and contract as needed. Right. But now I've gotten a little bit, I would say, smarter in the sense that I've found a couple guys that are really good at being a general contractor. I could probably do 10 or 15 houses right now with maybe as much effort as doing 2 or 3. Because, over time you build out a team a little bit better. You learn how to delegate better. You learn how to not just leverage money, but leverage your time and other people's time. You develop systems and processes to make some of those routine things more automated so you're not spending as much time on those.
What were the real growing pains in that?
Oh, you get so excited. If you're a deal junkie, which I've kind of found that I like saying yes to stuff and doing stuff and having a new thing in front of me every day. You can get into the trap of just saying yes and kind of losing your analysis of the deal and being a little loose with like, it's probably, we've done so many like this. It's probably just a $40,000 remodel. And you kind of maybe take shortcuts, which sometimes really help you because if you're doing it in volume, you're going to win way more on some than you should. You're going to lose on some because you're not paying attention. And, the average kind of stays the average. But, becoming too emotional maybe and too overconfident without really doing your due diligence on every property. And then it got easy to do 1 or 2 at a time, but you're doing 60 at a time. That requires, you got to know like how much do you want to expand your team or kind of can you keep it more in-house? How much do you really want to work? How much do you want to make? And so it's kind of those discussions. But usually what gets out of control is your scope of work, taking not quite understanding exactly up front what needs to go in, and then along the way you're changing stuff or you're on the fly, you're just kind of haphazard putting things together because the clock's ticking. So it's like, well, let's move quicker, but sometimes moving quicker, you're actually taking a few steps back if you didn't just plan better. So I learned way better to plan, again, the end in mind. Let's map out where we're headed, do that painful work up front so we have a clear path to know where we're going, instead of getting into it and be like, oh, should we open up this wall? Should we open up, let's have that all figured out ahead of time. Even little things like let's say we're doing homes in a similar neighborhood, we can just template, we're doing every house the exact same. It gets boring for us, but the same person's not borrowing every single house.
It's efficient.
It's efficient, right? So just those systems and processes, and when those are broken and you're doing volume, everything gets screwed up. You pay way more in interest because you take longer. You're having the same conversation 4 or 5 times with your contractor versus once because you have a clear path of what you're doing. Little pain points like that I don't know if you ever quite figure out because as you're always progressing, you're always kind of doing more and more and creating a little bit of a more complicated problem, not just because the houses you're doing are more complicated, but the volume that you're doing becomes a little bit, it adds to the complexity.
Yeah. So if somebody who, they've been watching all the television shows and they think that I can do that, like I put in a new bathroom in my house, I could do a fix and flip. You in this day and age, you still recommend it?
Well, absolutely. Can they do it? 100% they can. Okay. Now, should they?
Should they do
That's
it?
Another question. Do you have the risk appetite? Are you okay not knowing exactly where you're going to end up financially? I mean, I've done a few different presentations where I've painfully gone through and added up, like of these almost 450, I've lost money on probably 45 houses. So if my first 45 houses were all losses, we're not sitting here talking, right? You know, I'm doing something else,
Or
right?
even if 45 of your first 100.
Yeah, exactly. And so, you know, when you're doing volume, I mean, people that tell me they've never lost money on real estate, I'm like, I don't know how that's possible. I lose money all the time, you know, one way or another. But are they okay with the risk? Are they okay with the risk? And then do they have the ability? You got to have the ability to either know how to hire the right person for one of these roles or do it yourself. You've got to know the back end values of real estate really well. That ARV, it goes back because that's what's driving everything. If you can't get a very high comfort level of where you're headed with the sales price when you're done with it, nothing else really matters. Because if you screw up on that, who cares how well you did the remodel? Who cares how pretty it looks? But if you thought it would sell for $1 million, but the market really was telling you the whole time 800, and your break even was 900, you're writing a check for $100,000 to get out of that deal. So you've either got to be comfortable yourself or know someone that can understand values. The other piece to that then is the remodel component. On the flip side, if you're an amazing realtor and you're like, I know everything about my numbers, but it takes you 2 years to remodel a house and you go 30,000 over budget, yeah, good luck. You're not playing the flipping game. And then it comes back to money. You know, you either got to know how to raise money or you've got to have a pile of cash that you can fund your deals. The guys that end up becoming the most successful flipping, they are good or they have someone on their team that's good and reliable and accurate on all three. They can predict the right values, they nail their budget in a quick time frame, and they have access. Doesn't always have to be cheap, but they have access to a lot of money. It doesn't matter if it's hard money, lines of credit, or cash. You got to keep the machine going, and the machine needs money. Yeah.
Did you have to create those three people, those three teams?
Yeah, for a lot of time, it was me. All of them except the money, at least, but I knew how to find the money, right? And so other than I don't do the remodel work myself, but we would get good at understanding, okay, a 2,000 square foot home, this painter's going to be $1.50 a square foot, you know, carpet, $9 a square foot per carpet. Jaron does my carpet, you know? So building out a team of vendors, either subcontractors or direct laborers, that's what I think I get good at and I'm good at. I still don't understand all the technical words for like a lumber beam or a steel beam. It's like, I don't know. It goes in there and supports the house. But I don't need to.
Right.
I just need to know who that person is. There's this concept of who, not how, right? I don't always need to know how I'm going to, I need to know that it needs to be done, but it's who's going to help me do that. And sometimes the who is myself. I've always felt most comfortable myself figuring out the values because I've always been an agent. I've always had access to the raw data on the MLS. So I do see people that maybe get a little lazy and they're like, my agent knows. Well, your agent might know, but your agent might not know all the other pieces to your puzzle, right? And sometimes agents are like, they want to be the hero and they want to be like, well, I'm really good. Market's saying 200, but you know what? I bet I can get 215. Now, if he knew that the borrower's break even, that his client's break even was like 195, and he's telling him 215, no problem, this guy's thinking, okay, I can make 20 grand. But if the realistic conclusion is 200, this guy's doing like a deal for next to no money with a lot of risk. So you got to have someone like that on your team that can get to know values really well, get to know the rehab, and then know how to manage the money. And when you're doing a lot, you maybe have to have that broken out in like a contractor that you can check in with, you know, a really good agent on your team that knows their butt's on the line if we don't guess that number correctly. And it's not an ego thing. It's just like, what is the market today? Throw out the one anomaly comp that, you know, is like how did they get that price? Like throw that one out, throw out the bottom ones too. What's the realistic median for like a really well done house? Now there's more that comes into play. It's kind of like the small ball flipping. Okay, where's it at? Does it have a view? Because it all comes back to location, right? So there are reasons why your house should sell for more than another one, but it's someone that can understand all of that in a realistic way, not in a make-believe, like an ego way, but in like, what is the market telling us? And so you either got to do that yourself, or you've got to have someone super credible that can help you with it.
Is that more complicated than it sounds? Because I would think comps, right? And if one side of the street's got the stream on it and the other side doesn't, all right, this one's worth a little bit more, but comps would tell me that, right?
Exactly. So it can be more complicated. Think of where you live in your market. Like for me here, in Utah, you've kind of got by default, because of I-15, the east side of I-15, the west side of I-15. And that so much doesn't matter for me. What I look at is comps that are the easiest, or neighborhoods that are the easiest. If I talk to a flipper that's like, how do I start learning about this? How can I get good at finding values for properties? Go to a neighborhood. It doesn't matter if it's a high-end neighborhood or low-end neighborhood. Usually, I shouldn't say low, more affordable neighborhood. Usually you go to where a builder built tract homes that were virtually all the same square footage, make, and model. Those are the easiest because you have the most credible comparables immediately close to your subject property. Like I think of a neighborhood in Kearns called Hoffman Heights. It was built in the 50s after the war. They were all brick, 3-bedroom, 1-bath, 1,100 square feet homes. Man, you have 50 of those in a neighborhood and you have 10 that recently sold. That's really easy to determine what your house is going to sell for. Then it just comes down to what level of rehab or condition of the home is it in. You look at those 10 that have sold, and if you're going for that after repair value number, you're throwing out all the ones that don't look like they're in good shape, that don't have new cabinets, that aren't recently updated. Then it gets really easy. It's like, oh, these are the 5 I need to look at. They all sold plus or minus 300,000. If I do the same thing or better, I'm going to be right around 300,000. Where they get difficult is when they're unique and there's not maybe as many of the same style of home. And usually that happens in maybe a more pricier neighborhood where the developer that built the subdivision had a lot more maybe custom builds or flexibility in their floor plans or something like that, where they weren't all just cookie cutter.
Yeah. Well, you're seeing some of these gentrified neighborhoods.
Yes.
Where all of a sudden these homes are popping up that don't look like anything else.
Yes.
Right? But it's become a neighborhood. Like I remember with the park there off of 9th or 7th.
Oh, like
Liberty Park.
Yep.
Right? I mean, west of that was so different than east of that, right? But
But what happens over time is, I'm with you. And those are like awesome neighborhoods to flip in because you can create tremendous value because one, they're near the downtown core. People want to live there. People are putting some serious money into the surrounding commercial. So you can support a really high price if you do something really cool with really high quality. So those areas can be tougher to comp because you may not have a brand new 3,000 square foot home as a comparable in the neighborhood.
Right.
And so that's where you can be rewarded huge if you're like the first one to do that. And the regular homeowner maybe isn't quite up to speed. So they may not think that their value could be as high as it could because they're not thinking, wow, you just tear this down and start over. You wouldn't do that in maybe more of a cookie cutter neighborhood. But where the density and where the land is valuable because there's not that much more of it and where people want to live and the zoning is allowing for tear downs and higher density, those are great. Those are really, really good opportunities, but it is a little harder to find those. So, the skill in some of these other neighborhoods is like, okay, it's 1,000 square foot home now, but most of the homes around here are 2,000 to 3,000 square feet. Now my scope of work isn't just doing the carpet and paint. It's maybe adding a second story, and creating huge value that way.
Yeah, taking down everything but the fireplace and going from there.
Which you wouldn't do in the cookie cutter neighborhood because you don't need to.
Right.
It's not good or bad. It's just like, what will the market bear and how do you get there? And then when you have the ability to like push the envelope a little bit because people will pay more for an address than they will for a home, like then you can do something really creative with the real estate. That's where it gets fun.
Yeah. So you're still finding homes with your list the way you've always found them.
Yep.
The market's totally different.
Yep.
But
there's always an opportunity. There's always an opportunity. Where we get, I guess, hurt a little bit is in the transition time. So I have no idea what the future will hold. Let's just assume that starting from today, supply goes up and demand goes down. That's going to naturally shift what's happened up until now. So now let's say instead of going up, values are going to either plateau or come down a little bit. And let's say that takes 6 months. So let's say we're going up, bam, bam, bam. So let's say in 6 months, values are 10% lower than they are now. Who knows if they will be.
Right.
The way things have been going, they're going to be 110% more. But this is where flippers can get hurt, is because, again, you have that flipper that when it's here when they buy it, they're thinking mentally like, well, worst case, it's not going to go down, but maybe it's not going to go up, but they maybe still have the value here, right? And then what happens, let's say it drops 10% and they've overspent on their remodel and they've taken a couple extra months longer, so they have a couple extra months of interest. And all of a sudden, what was their break even here or here, but now if the market's here, there's some pain, right? Mm-hmm. Because, so the short-term changes that are fast, those hurt. But if it's like an airplane landing slowly, yeah, you may not make as much as you're going to make, but you're still going to make a little bit of money. It's those spike swings that hurt a flipper, both economically in real dollars and real value and real math, but also psychologically, Yeah. So you've got to have some grit and just understanding that, like, the sun's going to come up tomorrow, like, yes, you might lose money on one, but, like in me, like what I've done is I've always been in the game. So yeah, I've lost here and there, but I've also won way more than I should have because I wasn't smart enough to realize, that the market would be so much higher a year later.
Or you had that mentality of abundance. So
yeah,
that helped you. So when you put your Nostradamus hat on, with rates, right? Because that's one of the big unknown, scary things right now with real estate, interest rates.
Yep.
It's like, and in many aspects, they have to go up and go up significantly. If they will or not, who knows? But they should.
Yep.
What's that going to do?
Well, it's got to drive the price demands. It's got to calm those, if not even bring them down a little bit. At some point, it is a math problem for the household budget. They may really want that house, and they may really hate living in their parents' basement. But if rates go up another % and prices don't come down, they just can't afford it.
Right.
It's an affordability issue for a lot of people. This was a report out of the Kim Gardner Institute at the U, my buddy Dayon, who works up there. This is a few months old, maybe even almost a year ago now, where it was like, for the first time ever, Utah crossed the path where half of the people could not afford the median priced home in the market. So that's where it maybe starts getting scary for values. The other thing you got to look at is supply and demand, though. Let's say we have a lot of people still cashing out of their homes from California or other areas that had appreciated more than us over time, and they have a lot more down payment or they have a lot more cash, and they can afford a higher rate, and maybe they'll just settle for a smaller home because they'd really rather come to Utah. We saw that with COVID, right? There were the jokes about the number one realtor in Utah was California Governor Newsom, right? Because, the perception was that he was, forcing people through politics or whatever, his policies to go somewhere where they felt safer. So that goes back to location. So Utah has really good demographics, really good economics. It's a great place to live. I mean, I'm biased because I live here. So until that changes, like what's happened in, say, Detroit over the years, I mean, maybe not recently, but like when you lose like one major employer, that like real estate values drop because the demand for housing goes down, the supply goes up, and then you throw in an interest rate tick, that's going to throw things out of whack quick. And in the financial collapse, values got so high off of speculation and really bad loans because anyone and everyone could go out and get whatever kind of loan they wanted at whatever price. The underwriting is different now. You do actually have to qualify for the loan that you're getting, but it's helped people qualify for pretty much anything, because rates have been so low. But it's just a math problem. It's an inverse relationship. Prices go up, rates go up, payments go up. If wages don't go up, what are you going to do?
Yeah. So it's just, there'll still be opportunity. It's just a different math problem.
Oh, exactly. That's a great way to put it. There'll still be opportunities, just a different math problem. And there will be some uncertainty in the transition part, and people that can see that and have the resources will capitalize on it. You know, I mean, unless everyone ceases to exist, this game is always going to be played, and there's always going to be players that can, you know, be on other side of it. Right now, everyone's been winning. You know, everyone's been winning because the market's been saving everybody. But at some point, you got to get really good and go back to those fundamentals of sticking to your budget, sticking to your time frame, being very realistic about your sales price, being very surgical about being in and out, using the right kind of leverage. You're going to be okay. You're going to be okay. When you forget those things, you're not going to be okay.
Because the game's not easy.
The game is not easy. It looks easy now.
So fix and flips, still a viable business.
Definitely.
You got to know your numbers.
Yep.
What it's going to be worth.
Yep.
Right? Walk me through the three things.
So that you'll hear it called ARV or after repair value, or just simply think of it as that price you're going to list it on the market.
And then you got to have your repair costs.
Yep.
And then, of course, what you're buying it for.
And what you're buying it for. And all of that is driven, again, by those pieces of how much money you want to make, what's your cost of money, your rehab, and your other costs, realtor fees, all that kind of stuff. That stuff's all easy. Like, that doesn't take that long to figure out. You know, the real art and skill of it all really boils down to your efficiency in managing the rehab based on how many homes you're doing and your accuracy on that ARV. You get those down really good, the rest of the stuff becomes fairly automatic. Then you just have fun. Where's your next deal? You know?
And and you can still find deals.
You can still find deals.
The variety, you mentioned some of those lists, which, like I said, it does. Some of it sounds a little predatory.
Yep.
You're taking advantage of people who, you know, lost a family member, divorce, financial, whatever.
Yep.
But you're also bringing them a solution.
Yeah. Unfortunately, they have a problem.
Life happens.
And that problem could be solved in a nefarious way. But, you know, yeah. And it's a negotiation, whatever. Sure. But yeah, there's deals out there. And some people just don't simply know what to do with the property. I mean, this is a little bit of an aside, but I have people that have been real estate agents for 10, 20 years. They know how to be agents. They know how to buy and do a listing presentation. They know how to sell. They know how to drive people around. They know how to manage the emotions of a buyer and a seller, but they don't know if it's a deal or not. And I'll have them come to me all the time and say, I don't know if this is a deal, but my seller is in such a crappy spot. He needs to sell it for this price. Would you take it? That's actually, the two I'm buying right now are exactly that scenario where they're like, if you can hit this price, he doesn't really care. He knows it could be worth more. And I'll usually tell them, I'll say, hey, I'm buying this for $285. I think you could sell it for $400, but you need to put $40,000 into it. They're like, great, you buy it for $285. Great, cool. I'm solving your problem. You're helping me solve mine. That's a win-win.
That's, again, the advantage of networking is to get to that point where off-market deals are coming to you has to be sweet.
Yeah, and it's just, some of it's time in the market, but then also your familiarity with values in the neighborhoods. You can spot deals quick, so you're not spending a lot of time on stuff that's not going to work out. You know, if you get to know neighborhoods really, really well, you'll know anything under $200 a square foot or $300,000, that's going to be a deal. There's little hacks too, once you get into it, that you can kind of nail down. And then with technology and the ability to train people, like I've had an assistant in Jamaica, like finding deals for me. And she doesn't know anything about Utah, but she can usually get close enough to at least point me in the right direction. So then I can just be really targeted and time focused on those 2 or 3 properties and tweak them enough with my local knowledge to maybe make a deal work.
It's nice. You're still having a blast with this, aren't you?
Yeah. It's fun.
Good for you.
Keep it going.
Matt Strong, thank you again so much for sharing your knowledge. It was a delight chatting with you.
I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
Well, James, that completes your interview with Matt Strong. So what was that experience like? You know, flipping houses, you know, something that we see on TV and a lot of people talk about it, but did you get a sense that this was something actionable after you talked to him?
Very much so. I mean, he does walk you through how to do it, but what I really appreciated is he's got such expertise on the money side of it, because I understand how to, you know, go and put up some sheetrock and paint it, but what I really appreciated from him is that knowledge and expertise he shared with us on hard money lending.
Yeah.
How do we get the finances to do this? And he was he was a great guy for that.
Yeah, well, an important part of the story. So glad you're here to observe it, and thanks for tuning in. Well, that concludes episode 7 of our 9-part docuseries, Hacking Real Estate. Really great to be here with you. Again, we're not done, even though we're getting toward the end. We are not done, and we have a lot of very important content actually coming up for you. So stay tuned in. If you've already invested, thank you so much for doing that. My sincere gratitude for you owning this series and caring enough about this information to say that you want to have it in your possession. And if you haven't, now's a good time to check it out. Let me just make that little suggestion to do so. Anyway, I'll see you in episode 8. Looking forward to it.
Everybody wants to get into real estate because it helps fight against inflation. It's a hard asset. It naturally, appreciates in value. I feel like every successful person financially eventually comes to real estate for the tax benefits. It's the last place to park your money when you want to start controlling, getting close to retirement, and you go to wealth preservation mode versus wealth accumulation, where you are like at younger stages of your life. When we see a fully occupied apartment complex, what that means to us is the rents are too low. A healthy building always has around 95% occupancy because you want to leave just enough for someone else to come in. But when you're at 100% occupied, number one signal is you need to increase your rents.
I'm convinced that the education system is made to make employees, not entrepreneurs, not really investors. And it hasn't changed in 50 years. So we all come out employees, I guess. I think real estate investing is simple, and I think it's a skill. And because I think it's a skill, I think it could be learned. There's only one LeBron James. There's only one Steph Curry. But everybody can learn real estate investing. It is very simple. Tight buy box, daily discipline. Don't overcomplicate it.
I think most people go through life with a fixed mindset or scarcity mindset, and that, hey, I am where I am, I can't change it, I can't control it, it is what it is. We live in the most amazing time where anything you want to learn about is at the tip of your fingertips. There's a plethora of information on any topic you want to know about, and so for me it was, okay, I'm going to be a sponge, and I just want to learn as much as I possibly can. And I really do believe that real estate's the best way to create more freedom through passive income as well as generational wealth.